Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Mindset Podcast, brought to you by the Opportunities for Youth in Africa, or OYA program. OYA is a joint initiative of the UN Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, and the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. Featuring interviews with inspiring young entrepreneurs from across the African continent, this podcast is about seizing opportunities, overcoming and learning from setbacks, and succeeding in a variety of settings to fulfill your business ambitions. And now, over to our host.
Hello, this is the Entrepreneurial Mindset, a podcast about young and dynamic entrepreneurs in Africa and the mindset that is behind their success. My name is Fifi Peters and I am your host. In today's episode, we will be looking at how to change an idea into a business. There is a saying that it takes an entrepreneur to build an entrepreneur, and today's guests are living proof of that. Both of them run innovation hubs in their communities that give young people access to resources to start a business and also to scale up. From Kenya, I am joined by Dorcas Owinoh, who is a director at LakeHub. And from Zambia, we have Mara Michelo, who is the founder and CEO at the Jacaranda Hub. Hi, ladies, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Fifi. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. Thanks so much for asking. And because you asked, I'm going to ask you the next question. Mara, today I think a lot of young people, particularly in Zambia, look at you and look at what you have been able to achieve at such a young age in your life. But I wonder if they know a bit about you and your personal life and who you are and your upbringing. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and what it was like to grow up as a young woman in Zambia.
Thank you for that question, Fifi. I feel like a lot of people know a bit about me because I'm practically an open book. I'm very open in my journey. The things that I share about my life. I'm very open to sharing experiences, best practices, and just what my life has been to this point. But if we have to go a few years back, I'm a young lady that grew up as an orphan, which somewhat defined the person I am today. Because my parents died when I was quite young. My mom died when I was 9 and my dad died when I was 11. And life as I knew it at the time, I think for me just took a complete 360, a complete change of life, a complete change of, structure for my home, just understanding of what was going on around me. And at that point, I think I had to make a decision, even at that young age, to survive, a decision to believe that there was more to life than what was presented to me by my parents. And at that point, I needed to make a decision to leave, to choose me, because there were quite a number of hardships that I had to overcome. And every day I was faced with, a position of making a decision whether I was going to leave or I was going to give up. And that sort of defined the kind of person I am today. I'm a self-loving, a self-believing individual that believes that for one to go far in life, you need to believe and bet on yourself. And that's what I've been doing all along. But I think one of the key elements about me was also just being very inquisitive, always asking questions. Is this it? Could there be more? What is the world expecting of me? What was I placed here to be? What was I, meant to be as an individual? I had those questions growing up and they were very, very vivid. Even when my parents were around, I wasn't the kind of child that was completely obedient. I was the kind of child that asked questions. Why? When I'm asked to do something and I don't think it needs to be done that way, I would ask why. So that has somewhat crafted, the canvas of who I am even today. I ask questions and continue to ask questions. So I'm here on earth what am I here to do? What am I meant to do? What is my purpose? And because of that, I found that I'm a very purpose-driven person. I do everything with purpose. I do everything knowing that I have more to give. And I think I've just crafted my life around service. And that has really helped me to understand who I am and what value I bring to my community.
And so, Dorcas, life in Kenya as a young lady, as a young girl turning into a lady, maybe that's more accurate. What was it like growing up for you?
I grew up in Kenya in a small town called Kisumu. This is very important to my story because for a long time, I think not just in Kenya, but in so many places, it's believed that if you want to make things happen, you need to get out of your small city and go to a big city to become, to bring the big change that you want But I grew up in Kisumu and left Kisumu to go to Nairobi, a very big city, to study. And throughout, I studied, my background is in software development. So I'm very passionate about three things: women, technology, and entrepreneurship, in that order. So, I left when I went to Nairobi, went to universities. At one point, I dropped out of university because I wanted to pursue my startup, which was, a tech startup. And at that time, I believed, even Zuckerberg dropped out of school and a few people dropped out of school and built, unicorns. And
most entrepreneurs, you drop out of school and then you become successful. Why do you think that is the case?
Oh, because I think because it's not because I don't think it's you drop out of school to become successful. Sometimes school is very limiting because of you do not want textbook explanation to how to go through your journey as an entrepreneur. You want to explore, you want to see what's out there, you want to, do so much because, you're growing a business. And that is something that, unfortunately, to most entrepreneurs, it's very, very school limits. So if you have to be a bit defiant and get out of school to explore what's out there, which I did. And I had a very good run for 5 years from the age of 20 to 25, running a startup, fundraising and doing all that. And then eventually had to move to Kisumu to, start a vibrant ecosystem of entrepreneurs and techies in Kisumu, which was very important because it showed that you do not have to leave your city, a smaller city like Kisumu, to go to Nairobi to prosper. We can create ecosystems that will make entrepreneurs and startup founders thrive, even in smaller cities. And for the past 5 years, that is what I have been doing in Kisumu.
Because it sounds like you learned that by actually having to go to a big city to realize that, everything that to start and scale up was actually at home. So, someone who's thinking that, do I also need to go down that path of curiosity, to that path of exploration, to go and see what is out there in the bigger world, and then see how I can bring what's out there in the bigger world back home? What would you say to a young business person like that?
Well, 10 years ago when I was moving, there was the buzz of tech and entrepreneurship in Kenya was in Nairobi. And for you, that was the narrative. For you to prosper, for you to be known, for you to meet investors, you have to be in Nairobi. And that's the narrative we are changing as LakeHub. You don't have to go through all this. They say you go through some things in life for someone else, for the people behind, for the people that are coming. So I'd say when we founded LakeHub, founding LakeHub made us, we went through that for the people that are coming behind us or are behind us, the entrepreneurs that we are now mentoring. But also you find that 10 years ago, there were no structures that were put in place in these smaller cities. Sure. Because investors, development agencies were not looking at smaller cities. And I think that narrative is quickly changing because there are young people in other cities, smaller cities. There are people with ideas, beautiful ideas, life-changing ideas in smaller cities. It doesn't have to be bigger cities. Right now, bigger cities are saturated. There's need to explore other smaller cities to see what exists, what opportunities can we provide to entrepreneurs, to techies in these small cities, to give them, a chance,
Sure.
a fresh chance. Yeah,
I hear you. I hear you. Point well made. Mara, give us a sense of your academic background, and I think also more importantly your first experience with entrepreneurship. How did it happen for you?
I think for me, it's something that was there. It wasn't defined. I didn't know what entrepreneurship was at the time, and I remember growing up on the farm in one of the towns here in Zambia called Kabwe, and me just taking an interest in farming, set up an organic farm, started making jam, which I would walk about 2Ks to our neighbors to sell. I remember forcing one of our family friends, Sven Pilblad, God bless him. He would be forced to buy more than one, jars of jam just to support. I took vegetables to school to my friends. And that was basically when I knew I was entrepreneurial. I always wanted to do something other than just school. And I was looking for opportunities to make money. I remember after completing my high school and coming back to Lusaka to the city, and I started my first job as a volunteer. And then I started looking for opportunities outside of my work. And I remember after being a volunteer for 6 months, I went to the organization I worked for and told my boss they were lacking structure in the organization, and there was no administrative role to take care of certain things. And so he told me, okay, then create a job description for yourself. Give us what your deliverables will be, and tell us how much you want to get paid. And so I created a position as administrative assistant, and created a job description for myself and told him how much I wanted to pay. I should have done a bit more research because I think I undervalued. But then I was so excited to just get my first official job, that I was given the go ahead to set up that position. And I worked there for 6 months, and I was immediately bored. I said, I don't think administrative work is for me. It is too restricting. I'm stuck in the office. I want to be out there in the field, getting dirty and just finding out what's going on. So I asked the organization if they had any other position that could give me the opportunity to discover a bit more about my skills, my talent. And I just told them, I want to learn more. And I feel like I'm not learning from behind the desk. And that's when I was given another role now to, become a facilitator and a trainer. And this was sport for development programs that we were running. And so I kept on identifying what I was good at. I kept on improving on my skills and kept on asking for more. All the time, like while doing that, I was now trying to find out what I could do with my skills, if there were any opportunities to make money outside of my job. And I kept going for it. And I think at that point, I realized that I was meant to do more. Initially, I wanted to study law, but then while working as a volunteer and creating that position, I discovered that I wanted to be driving social impact. I wanted to be, at the core of working with people, humanitarian work. And so I discovered, there were, programs that could help me build my skill. And that's when I got onto the project management space. I went and did a diploma. Then I discovered I needed more. I did a degree, and then I went and did my master's. And all this time, I was basically trying to solve a problem with my skill set. So continuously improving myself so that I could meet the demand of my job in every organization.
Okay, it's so interesting because similarities between you and also differences, and I think that with what is similar is that both of you were quite defiant and disobedient in your early years, and it was against a status quo or a system that you questioned. There was a whole lot of curiosity as to why things were a certain way, and if it didn't make sense, an exploration on both of your parts to go and make sense of the situation. Although, Dorcas wasn't too much of a fan of education in her early years, but I imagine, Dorcas, your learning happened in other forms, and particularly as you grew. But let's talk about where you guys are right now, because you are both essentially running similar ventures in which you've set up these hubs. The focus is on technology, and you're giving young people within your respective communities access to resources to equip and empower themselves in this digital ecosystem. So, Dorcas, tell us a story about the LakeHub. How did that begin?
So so the LakeHub began 6 years ago with our CEO James Udede, who was before then. There was we were young people in our early 20s, very passionate about technology and the startup life. So James, the CEO, was in a university in Kisumu, where he was a student of computer science, but organizing meetups in school. I was in Nairobi running the startup life, pitching in different accelerators, raising funds. But still, once in a while, I would come back to Kisumu and organize meetups, not for students, but for people that were not in universities, and just meetups in restaurants, and we discuss things like, this is the latest technology, this is what you can do with the latest technology, this is what's happening in the entrepreneurship space, and this is where you can get funding for your next venture. So we were two different people with very similar interests, and we were doing almost similar things. So James went ahead.
Kind of like birds of a feather.
Yes, James had the idea of setting up a space where we could meet, and instead of meeting in different restaurants and coffee shops and all that in schools. So he did that, and I remember when I had quite a rough year with running my startups and fundraising. I sent him a chat, an email, and said, your space, you just set up a space. I just read that you set up a space. Who are you with? What are you doing? And you're like, I'm all alone. I'm in this space trying to make it work. I don't have any meetings. I'm like, oh yeah. He asked, do you want to come over so that we can do this thing? I'm like, yeah. So the next few days I hopped onto a bus and came to Kisumu to set up LakeHub. So what we've been doing over time is, I started by growing the community. So making sure that the community was aware of LakeHub and what we were able to do. And to us, the community at this point meant young people, like I said, young people that are looking for these opportunities, that only believe that these opportunities were available in Nairobi, and also people that were now interested in getting to know how to code and technology. And so what I did was made sure this was known, and if you wanted that for you as a young person, LakeHub was it. And creating a vibrant community around it. We did it for 2 years, and it grew. From there, we opened it up for people. The good thing about it is we opened it up for other young people who are our age mates in our mid-20s at that time, to come up with programs. What do you want to see? There were people running, meetups on, called fail ups, where they'd come and talk about their failures, and all that. Other people that had dropped out of school like me, we had our own corner to talk about that. People that wanted to learn different languages and entrepreneurship activities and all that. And over time, this caught the attention of development agencies. It caught the attention of other partners from across Kenya and beyond, to come and see what these young people had done for themselves, what these young people had set up for themselves. But I am very grateful, because that space has this space, the LakeHub space, opened so many opportunities to so many young people that we have people that are working, so many people that are working for international organizations, developers out there. We have startups that are raising funds that came out of LakeHub, and they were very organic. And, it's a blessing and a curse that we do not have structures, because the structures were coming. Because none of us, James and I, none of us had worked anywhere before. I had only worked for my startup. James was straight from university. And so we were just winging it as we go.
Yeah. And your winging it clearly paid off. On your startup, what happened to that?
The startup, we there's a whole different story of fundraising and trying to fundraise and make startup work in Kenya. So what really happened was I think those are some of the lessons I really learned as an entrepreneur very early on, because when I created the startup, what we were doing was linking small-scale farmers to buyers of fresh produce, because we were trying to prevent post-harvest losses that come about because farmers do not get ready markets. And also try to eliminate the middlemen who take advantage of the farmers. But then we were really in love. I was really in love with the idea. And as a developer that I am, and if you talk to developers, they're very passionate of what they can do. And that's what I quickly did. I developed an amazing app, and that I was very in love with. You can clearly see I'm still in love with it as I'm talking about it.
Yeah, but did it work out? And
it didn't work out because I took it to the farmers, and the farmers were like, we don't even have smartphones. We don't use smartphones all the time, Dorcas. So we had to. So what we did.
Ahead of its time.
I like to think of it like that. It was ahead of its time. So yeah, when we took it out, the farmers were, no, we don't know how to. So we had to come back to the drawing board and learn and teach come up with a different way of using the simpler phones for the farmers to work with this. But then again, that was also very expensive, and the process of fundraising and putting in structures and trying to get the different people, different farmers to use it was not just working out. But yeah, I managed to raise funds. I think I did one round of funding, which I piloted the product with the well, let's just say I will not say it in this podcast. Yes. We did get funding to do it, and we managed to work with about 50,000 farmers at once. But then there was a lot of things. Understanding, we needed to understand the market better. We needed better technology. We needed to have better structures to run. So after 5 years, I told my co-founders, let me take the lessons I've gotten here to LakeHub and see if we can, get other people from Kisumu to come up with the ideas and, develop solutions to problems that are around us. So yes.
You mentioned quite an important lesson, because I think a lot of people have got this idea in their heads that, as an entrepreneur, you always keep going, you never give up. But it seems like you got to a position and you developed something that was ahead of its time. Who knows? Maybe you need to go back to the drawing board there. Yeah. But you saw that it wasn't working, and after 5 years, you said, "Okay, let me take the important lessons from this and go on to do something even better," which you have. But Mara, let's come and look at the story of the Jacaranda Hub, because you went from this young girl who created a position for herself in the organization and wrote up her own job specification, and perhaps wasn't smart enough by adding the extra zeros in terms of the remuneration for that job. But nonetheless, you've learned the lesson, I'm sure. But you also did quite a lot of studying project management, and then afterwards came a degree, and following the degree came the master's. How did Jacaranda Hub happen? What was the inspiration behind this venture that you have founded and you're currently the CEO of?
Okay. So I think it was going to happen, inevitably. And that is because as I was growing up in my career, I always outdid my performance indicators. I got into a job, and the first thing I'll map out my exit strategy. And I'll tell myself, I want to leave a legacy by the time I'm done. And so I worked for big corporations, first with not-for-profit organizations, international civil society organizations. And then I went and worked for corporate organizations. And then I reached a point where I wasn't getting challenged. And because I knew at the back of my mind that I wanted to run my own organization or build my own business. I was in Zimbabwe at the time. I was doing some consultancy, helping a colleague of mine. They were setting up a radio station and they were looking for content. And I was there helping to design content for radio. And that's when the idea was born. I was sitting at the Holiday Inn Hotel, and it had a lot of Jacaranda Hub, Jacaranda trees rather. And that's when the name was even born. And I said, I'm going to create content that help youth identify their strength, identify the power they possess, as a person that is growing and could add value to development, but also just to change the narrative for young people, because I felt that young people were constantly told they're the future leaders, they're going to change the world in future, not now. There was always a delayed, action to, defining who young people or youth are. And I wanted to change that because I could see the deteriorating, effects of young people in my country. A lot of young people were frustrated. A lot of young people were, involved in vices that were damaging, like alcohol and drugs and just wasting away. And I wanted to help young people in my country to develop, creative thinking, to develop ideas, and also, foster an identity within themselves. So I was doing research, trying to create a TV series called ID, where we can go back in history and look at Africans, where we come from, what defined us as we're coming up, what changed when Westernization happened, and what did we lose as an identity, and how can we retain that? So in doing research, trying to discover how to package my idea, I discovered some of the challenges that were happening in my country, and lack of employment, a big gap or disconnect between the academia and the industry, and that was leading to more unemployment. But also I discovered that there was a very small number of people that were running businesses in my country, young people that were running businesses. And that's when I started doing a lot of research, understanding ecosystems, understanding programs that are working in other countries. I'm a believer of not creating new things when there are other things working in other parts of our continent that could be replicated in my country. And I'm a strong believer of partnerships. So I started talking to people, developing partnerships. So one of my first gigs
You sure you're from Zambia, not from China? That sounds like the Chinese.
Through and through Zambian, through and through. And I tell you, Fifi, one of the first partnerships I actually formed was with Pink Drive. I was Pink Drive in South Africa. They do the mobile screening. They run the mobile screening units. They do a lot of work in South Africa and Cape Town. In fact, all across South Africa. And I remember, trying to discover what I could do to help my country. And I discovered that there were a lot of deaths that were resulting from cancer. And so I went to the cancer clinic and found out what the gaps were. And they mentioned to say early detection is actually a big issue. A lot of people who are dying from cancer is due to the fact that they discovered very late. And at that point, it was, they could not get any help. Most of them went at stage 4. So I did ask how I could support them. And they said, if you can, run programs that promote early detection, that would be a good support to the whole program. And so 2 weeks later, I was watching DSTV and I see this Pink Drive, Old Mutual Marathon, fundraising for cancer.
Okay, it's coming back now. I've actually run in one of their races.
Awesome. So I saw that and I quickly went on I like to do a lot of research. So I quickly went on my laptop, Googled Pink Drive, found the founder, wrote to her. 2 weeks later, she wrote back and said, "I'm so sorry I couldn't get back to you. We're doing screening in Cape Town. But I'm interested that you love our idea and you love to run it in Zambia. Why don't you come and see what's going on?" And within 2 weeks, I was on the next flight to South Africa. And that's how that journey started. Lessons learned along the way. Started the project, met up with a lot of partners, started, hitting the ministries, partnered with the ministries, partnered with the Cancer Diseases Hospital. It was going to be a huge project. And then I went into bed with the wrong people. They had their own agendas.
Yeah.
And I remember sharing a strategic plan, full, very trusting. And I shared it. And within 2 weeks after sharing it, it was being publicized by a very, very senior member of our country. And they couldn't take my calls. They couldn't return my emails. And that my dreams were shattered. And yeah, that stopped there. And I basically said, if I could build something like that, I can rebuild. And I left it at that.
But what was the lesson there about the information that you shared and the individuals that you shared it with? I mean, was it that you shouldn't share information or sensitive information with anyone? Or was it that you need to be mindful of who you are talking to? Help us understand what that taught you.
Okay, so what that taught me is the use of documents like NDAs. Sign an NDA. I didn't know anything about NDAs at the time, but also sharing information in pieces so that there's a level of understanding of what the intent is. And that is before you give a full document with a proper strategy. So today we're going to do this, we're going to achieve this. The person to contact is this one. I basically gave my entire idea away without even just giving a concept note that could then establish the relationship further and for us to be able to sign an agreement and say, this is what we're both bringing to the table. I gave it all away because I was under the impression they were a senior member of our country and they care about the people and therefore their agenda would be to make sure that it happens. And I was very naive. I was young and naive. I was very young and naive. And those some of the lessons that we basically share with the startups that we work with, a lot of them are scared to share ideas. But we always say, ideas need to be shared because feedback is important. But also just make sure there's an NDA. Don't be afraid to put an NDA at the table. A lot of startups are afraid to use NDAs because they feel like they're going to push, a potential investor or potential partner away. You are protecting yourself. Use that document because it can really protect you and your idea.
Sure. And, because a lot of, I think startups also, there's a lot of legal processes that perhaps they take advantage of, like things like NDAs, and perhaps they think, I don't have money for a lawyer to set up some of these formal documents for me. But the cost of not doing so in your case clearly shows that, you could have had a very big successful venture in Pink Drive, but nonetheless, you took the lesson. Dorcas, coming back to you, my sister, so you essentially have become a success by helping other young businesses become a success. And I'm speaking specifically about the trip that you took to Silicon Valley in 2017, LakeHub. Talk to us about how that happened and how you ended up, I think, receiving, one of the most prestigious awards, or being a runner-up to receive one of the most prestigious awards for any young person all over the world, being that being recognized by the Queen of England herself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, so like I've said before, what we do essentially at LakeHub is try to provide opportunities to young people. we say it in a simple term, we want to decentralize access to technology and entrepreneurship to young people. And I work very closely. One of the groups that I work very closely with is young girls that are in high schools, not even universities, high schools. And I have a program where all I want to do is spark their curiosity in tech, because most, there's a very big gender disparity in tech. And for me, technology was not one of my, core choices when I decided to go to university before I dropped out. Not because I did not like technology, but because I wasn't exposed to it early enough. So in my, in the program that I created, what we do is we go to the young people and tell them, around you, what problem have you identified? And then they, list all the problems they've identified and, talk about, and then we're like, now, how can you use technology to solve that problem? And now in this process, they're not just consumers of technology, but also creators of technology. And in that process, we've had so many brilliant ideas coming up from young high school girls. And 90% of these high school girls usually study computer science or computer-related courses in university. So because of my work with young people and closing the gender gap in technology, I have been fortunate enough to receive awards from the Queen and Forbes and all that. But specifically for the Silicon Valley, there's a group of 5 girls that were in the ages of 14 to 16 that came up with an app for reporting the female genital mutilation and cut. And what started out as, a team coming in together and talking about female genital mutilation, which is very common in their area, they decided, how about we create an app that makes it easy to report cases of FGM in our area and just document the cases of FGM. And also at least provide rescue centers for, at-risk girls or girls that want to run away from home because there's FGM. And I'm like, yeah, this is how you can use, technology to solve it. This is how, for you to solve this, you have to learn how to make it. And this is the language you have to learn. And it was a passion project. It's something that, they did because they wanted to solve a problem, but also because they just wanted to learn how to solve problems, how to use technology to solve problems. This caught a lot of media attention, and I think at one point I had to take them to Silicon Valley Google offices because they were pitching, and they received money to develop this app further. And this is something they've continued to do, and right now they are all over 18 and still doing it, even with the European Parliament, with EU. So, and these are girls from Kisumu, a very small town that and high school girls. So for me, it shows that talent is everywhere. It's just that opportunities is sometimes what we don't get. And if you give someone the right opportunities, you don't know how much or how far they'd be able to go.
So I'd like to speak with the both of you very briefly about the opportunities in the agriculture sector. I mean, a lot of experts and a lot of research is telling us that this is a sector that is a potential big employer and a potential money maker for future entrepreneurs. And I'd like to find out from you what you guys think about it. Mara, just beginning with you briefly, and initiatives by the private sector or development institutions like UNIDO and the Food and Agricultural Organization through their OYA program. What do you think about those initiatives as it does pertain to the opportunities in agribusiness?
Well, I think those are the quickest answers to some of the problems that Africa is facing. Africa still has a very huge food deficit, still has a very huge food wasted problem, right? So we talk about agribusiness development, processing, packaging. the value chain is still heavily unexhausted. And that is something that as an organization, we are, now promoting even more deliberately with some of the programs that we're now starting to do, even with OYA through UNIDO, to ensure that we can create a very clear pipeline for agribusiness development and, adopting of innovative programming in agribusiness. Because one, we need solutions for Africa's hunger problem. We still have a hunger problem in Africa. And yet Africa has a huge population, has vast land, and very good weather patterns compared to other countries across the globe. So we are underutilizing the resources. So for us, adopting innovative techniques of how we can cultivate, how we can produce, and we can process food so that we can have more food at the disposal of the people in Africa, that's for us quick resolves to Africa's problems. But then when you think about the population itself, the African demographic is heavily youth, right? Youth have energy. If you're trying to promote agribusiness, for a very long time, agribusiness has been attractive to the older demographic, which shouldn't be the case. It should be attractive to the younger demographic because we have energy, we have time, we have options. The older demographic, they have a few years before, they hit the core of life as we know it. So we need to invest. Yes. We need to invest, create deliberate structures for young people to thrive in agribusiness. Because I'll give an example of Zambia. Zambia is one of the largest exporters of food. Millie meal, maize. When we talk about even just having grazing land for livestock, Zambia is very fortunate. When you talk about access to land, my goodness, Fifi, you should visit Zambia. Zambia has so much land. It's crazy that all the young people want to concentrate in the urban areas or the cities. And it's because we have not created attractive structures for agribusiness to thrive among the young people. And so our call to action is that we must make agriculture, agribusiness attractive to young people. What sort of incentives are we putting in place for young people to be able to look to agribusiness as a solution and not everyone now looking for the white collar jobs that are already scarce? So I think with programs like UNIDO, with OYA now, we've got an objective or an agenda now with OYA to identify value chains like soya and aquaculture. These are value chains that even our government has heavily invested in. Our government is running a program under the Citizens Economic Empowerment where they are funding aquaculture development in the country. And there has been a call continuously to young people to get involved. The only challenge in that area is that they ask for collateral when inviting young people to apply. How many young people have collateral? And in most cases, collateral is assets.
Sure.
Okay. So young people have not been given access to land. So, and they don't have proper financing structure for them to build assets that become commercially viable, that can meet the demand for the collateral that most of our government institutions are asking for. So what sort of interventions are we putting in place to ensure that young people meet the financial demands as well as continue to grow their business, ideas around agribusiness? So for us, it's something that's very close to home as LakeHub. We have agendas deliberately set to be able to meet that demand. And the interest is growing. We've seen more young people now diverting to agriculture, which is very, very positive. And we're going to capitalize on that positivity. But also branding agriculture.
Yeah, that's good to know. And quite an interesting sort of stumbling block that you raise regarding, having assets, but how do you have assets when particularly you're just starting out, Yeah. I think that's definitely an area that the private sector needs to look at more with perhaps guidance from government. But Dorcas, just on your side, how is the investment case of agribusiness, particularly for young people, stacking up at the Lake?
Well, agriculture contributes to 70% of Kenya's GDP. can imagine how big that is. And my startup, 10 years ago, my startup was around, trying to help small-scale farmers because there was a lot of post-harvest losses. And I agree with Mara that every time we talk, most of the times when we talk about farming and agriculture, we show a picture of an older person, and it's not very attractive to young people. So at LakeHub, we've been very deliberate about this process. And one of the things that we've done is run incubation programs specifically for agribusinesses in different value chains. And one of our biggest success story is a fish farmer that created a device that helps to measure the pH of water, for fish farmers, impurities that are there in water, and tells you when you need to feed the fish, but also just give access to fish markets, to give very easy accessible markets to fish farmers. This is just one of the biggest success stories. And I think rightfully so, because we are just at the shore of Lake Victoria, and a lot of questions are always being asked. How are you helping the fish farmers that are just around you? But then again, one of our very successful incubation programs has been around, agribusiness. And what we did that was different from most agribusinesses that exist was we went to far-flung towns around, Kisumu, the rural areas that are there. And we found young people that are passionate about agribusinesses. And we took these young people because they're in the rural areas. They don't know about the opportunities that exist. How do they raise funds? How do they put their structures in order? You find that a young person really has sales. Say they have poultry or they're selling soya. They have a very big soya farm selling soya, but there's no proper structure for say finance, putting records. There's no proper tracking. So it's very hard to even raise funds, even though what they have is enough for them to, if put in a right way, they're able to grow beyond what they think. So what we did was we worked with 17 farmers for 6 months, and we trained them on how do you pitch, how do you put your records together in a nice way, what opportunities exist beyond your rural setting. That can open models. How do you get to the investors? How do you go to the bank? And out of this, the 17, we saw partnerships growing from the local rural farmers, young local rural farmers, partnering with other institutions to be suppliers. We saw them raising funds and getting loans from bank. And the program was so successful that we are currently now designing another one to work with women in agribusiness around, Kisumu. We want to work with other smaller hubs so that we can, especially hubs that are outside Nairobi, to support agribusinesses across, Kenya, but for towns that are not in bigger cities. There's a lot of potential that exists, that is there in agribusiness, especially in a place like Kenya, which it contributes to 70%. And I'm happy that we are now designing programs that are geared towards agriculture and how we can make agribusiness even thrive even more in Africa.
And that is delicious news from the both of you. Just last question. For young people who have been listening to you tell your story, the highs and the lows, how you overcame, and you have ideas or want to be a part of your ecosystems, where can they get information on how to get involved? Mara, how do we sign up for the Jacaranda Hub?
So we are running an exciting program now, Fifi. When we started out as Jacaranda Hub, one of the things that I was very clear on is that I was going to run a national program that could benefit all young people across my country. We just recently launched the Next Gen National Youth Incubation Challenge, which is targeting all youth between 18 and 35 in my country. It's a countrywide program that is providing access to training, to mentorship, to coaching, to business development services, and funding to all young people that have great ideas and are wanting to solve Zambia and Africa's problems. And one of the key areas actually that we're focusing on or interested in is agribusiness, and with a key or particular interest in soya and aquaculture production, but also different opportunities within the agribusiness value chains. This has been running, actually, the application is still open. So if young people are interested, they just go to Jacaranda Hub. We've got other programs like the Mosul Tunya Pitch, which is our investor readiness program that prepares entrepreneurs that are post-product or post-revenue that are looking to scale or, to increase their capacity to attract funding. We've got that running, but right now, one of our key star programs is the Next Gen, which is targeting young people, which is targeting the youth. And we have that running, and we're looking for great ideas. Our target is that for this first cohort, we're going to incubate 1,000 startups and give them access to financing where they can start and then go into a 6 months acceleration program. We want to be the biggest contributors to the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Zambia, and to create a very, very comprehensive pipeline for entrepreneurship growth and economic growth for our country. One of the major challenges has been that we don't have enough entrepreneurs applying or showcasing their products or services. We don't have enough entrepreneurs coming onto the space. We are now creating that pipeline. We're creating that early stage development of entrepreneurs that can go on to benefit other programs that are being set up by ecosystem partners. So come to Jacaranda Hub, and our platform is basically jacarandahub.org, or you can join NextGen by going to nextgen.org, and you will find us. We have quite a lot to offer young people in our country, and then of course across Africa, because we do collaborate with quite a number of partners within the region and across the continent.
Good to know. Dorcas, for the young people in your hometown or other smaller towns, or even the city of Nairobi looking to access opportunities there at LakeHub, where can they go to get more information?
Yes, we are very open to partnership and working with young people. So if to get in touch with us, just Google LakeHub. You can find us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. LakeHub, you'll find us even on Facebook, or go to lakehub.co.ke. Find a list of the programs we are running. Just choose that one that you're interested in. Even if you're not interested in a program, but you want to talk to me or anyone at LakeHub, feel free to DM us or send us an email.
And for young entrepreneurs, just asking themselves and scratching their heads and saying, a motivational message, especially in these times. We've still got COVID-19, we've still got the lockdowns, we've still got difficulty to a lot of economies and difficulty to start a business. What would your motivational message for young entrepreneurs who aspire to want to achieve what you have achieved be? Dorcas, let me start with you, and then Mara, if you can come after that.
Yes. My simple answer to this, it's very simple. It may look very, very simple, but it's consistency. Remain consistent. Even when you're tired, wake up, rest, take a rest, but do not stop. Remain consistent. Do it every day and every time. Yes.
I would like to agree with you, Dorcas. Consistency is such a key element to your growth, to your development. And on top of that, for me, it's just be very intentional, be very deliberate, don't make excuses, and just take opportunities as they come and present themselves. But in some cases, also position yourself for opportunities, because opportunities will always be there. The timing, the place where the opportunity will find you also matters. So where do you spend the most time? Who do you spend the most time with? What are you doing with your precious time? I feel like young people have been at the center of anything that has to do with distractive activities, young people have been used. And because we're too trusting, but also because we are found lying idle. Africa needs young people to rise up, to take center stage, to take up spaces. Agribusiness needs young people. Mining needs young people. Financial or fintech needs young people. We need young minds. Right now, my thought is that we are running on very, very limited resources, and I'm talking about human resources, because we are operating with a 0.01% of the whole population that is ideating, that is consistent, that is pushing. That's not a big enough number for us to change, to drive change in our communities, for us to promote transformative, development. We need young people really rising to the occasion and supporting interventions and programs such as Dorcas's program and my program and the OYA program, so that we can together create value for our economy, create value, for the next generation that's coming. We have a duty and a responsibility to leave an economy, an environment that is viable, so that all the other young people that are coming up, after us can find systems that are conducive for growth, systems that are conducive for development and continuity. I challenge you, young people. You have the energy, you have the time. It is your time. Take it.
Thank you, ladies. It has been very inspirational hearing your story of how you got to where you were, and something tells me that we haven't heard the last from you yet in terms of where you end up. But thanks once again for joining the Entrepreneurial Mindset podcast. If you need a reminder of who you were talking to, or you were listening to, talking to, I suppose it's the same way. I was joined by Dorcas Owinoh, a director at LakeHub from Kenya, and also all the way from Zambia, we had Mara Michelo, who is the founder and CEO of the Jacaranda Hub.
This has been the OYA Entrepreneurial Mindset Podcast. Tune in to stay up to date on each new episode for more inspiring stories. Share your entrepreneurial journey with us using the hashtag #WeNeedOYA. A link to our website and social media is available in the description of the episode.